are some extra chairs put out in the middle here and some to find back there if you can find a spot to put them. This room is very much evidence of who my dad was. But we're going to start with his childhood. So I will let him introduce himself here.
Good day, everybody, and thank you for coming out. I am Mary's brother-in-law, and Nancy, his sister, wrote a few things that I'm going to try and deliver properly. I need my specs. This is how it begins. I once wrote a song for my brother. It was in the early 1970s while he was in college in Lindsay, Ontario. And the song started with, I'd like to tell you about a brother of mine. You have to meet him. He's one of a kind. I think most people would agree. That's not telling you something you probably don't know already, except perhaps that he was always that way, one of a kind. We had a great childhood growing up. There were anywhere between 30 and 50 kids living on our street. And since our house was in the middle, many a day was spent with lots of kids on our front porch playing crazy eights or chess, or lighting caps, spitting peas at each other through a pea shooter, or water fights. We had the best water fights. Murray made sure anyone who wanted to join was included. He was a patient teacher for newcomers. He did set his mom's dress on fire once, though. He was playing with matches when Mom walked down the back porch stairs and her skirt brushed through the flames. His punishment was to strike every match in the box to extinguish his desire to play with matches. It must have worked too well because as teenagers we went camping. And if you know Murray, he was bragging about his ability to start a fire, which he never was able to start. Typical Murray. That was the same camping trip he bragged about having a great vocabulary. But he couldn't think of the word vocabulary. There was another time he didn't exactly follow our parents' instructions. No one was to climb into the attic of the garage. He learned why when he fell out of the attic head first and landed on the concrete. Seeing a pattern here? Then there was a time he moved a ladder when he was warned not to, and a claw hammer that was on top of it fell out and landed on his head. Lots of blood that day. Actually, there were many accidents or medical emergencies. We traveled a lot to North Bay where our father's parents lived. It was a grueling trip in those days, taking the full day on a 2-lane winding road into northern Ontario. Those were the days, though. No car seats, and we could play free in the back seat. Murray's favorite spot was to rest on the dashboard under the back window. We would break up the trip by stopping to see the sights, and invariably, it ended up with us having to seek medical attention, or at least go to the drugstore for some sort of medical supplies like bandages, because Murray had hurt himself again. None of these were really serious, and we came to expect them. As teenagers, we both worked at Silverwood's Dairy's ice cream plant in London. Murray's shift started at 11 p.m. and mine ended at midnight. When there was a blockage of boxes going into the freezer on a belt, it was Murray's job to free the jam at the freezer entrance. This is where the water fights became epic. For a few days in a row, just before I left for the night, I purposely created jam so that Murray had to climb the ladder to unjam it. Then, I would stand near the base of the ladder with a hose. It was so sweet to hear him yell, "Nancy, don't you dare!" But, of course, I didn't listen. He finally got me to stop, and one night, as I was leaving the building, his wet underwear hit me square in the face. It's a pretty good aim from the baseball days. So back to the song I wrote. After introducing him as one of a kind, the next lines were, he was in Angus with friends, fooling around, and they got tired of being on the ground. So Murray and Ron and Ed got the idea into their heads. So the idea was to steal the 3 flags that were the top of the flagpoles at the Borden military base outside of Angus, Ontario. Ron and Ed were successful in shimming up and stealing their flags, but Murray, being a little bit heavier, when he reached the top to get his top of the pole to get his flag, the pole started waving back and forth, snapped, and fell to the ground, with Murray landing on both feet. Well, both knees were broken. Yeah, not too pleasant. Ron and Ed dragged into the car and off to the hospital in Barrie. This was perhaps where Murray's personality really began to shine. Being bedridden and then wheelchair bound for 3 months, he practiced the art of talking. Because he had nothing else to do. In those months, he befriended everyone in the hospital, and his room was often a place where staff and visitors would gather for laughter. I wrote him a song to commemorate his time there. Now, unfortunately, the remainder of the song was lost in a flood at our house, so that's all you get as far as the song goes. When I left for post-secondary school, we lost touch because we weren't in the same city anymore. However, one day when we were both home, he truly touched my heart with a very generous surprise of a couple of $100, excuse me, saying he had a job and I didn't, and he thought I could use the money. The funny thing is, as adults, he didn't remember doing this. I'm so glad I had the chance to remind him this past September and thank him for being the best brother a girl could have. I will always love you, Miles.
Hello? There's a lot of people here. This is going to be really difficult for me, bear with me. It's impossible to sum up a man's life in a couple of speeches, but I'll do my best. While I'm up here, I'm probably going to be a wreck. I know you all can understand. Could be painfully slow and take some time to get through. But I feel I owe this to him. After everything that he's done for us. So I won't be scared to show in front of everyone how much this man meant to us. Murray taught me how a great man should be. He taught me how to show respect and be respected. He showed us how we should make people feel. He showed us every day how he wanted to be remembered. He showed us what it looks like to love my mother and siblings and to be so loved by everyone he meets. He was so charismatic, and he lived unapologetically. He was humble, and he was wise. Through my life, he helped me in many tasks, often woodworking, and he was always willing to lend a helping hand. We would work on projects together, even if we both knew we were unavoidably going to get very frustrated with each other. You see, he was what you would call a rough carpenter. And I consider myself a bit more refined. One of his many phrases he will be remembered for is, "It's good enough," which he used regularly while he was working with me. My mom called him the good enough carpenter, and that indeed was quite apt. He built many things without permits, that was his style, only to have to fight with the city after finishing to keep what he had built. Sometimes he won, and sometimes he lost. While working with him, he would watch me labor over the smallest detail, trying sometimes with several attempts to get it just right to satisfy my standards. He was perfectly fine with them, and even proud of my first attempt, but I wasn't convinced. He would get increasingly annoyed that I was still working on some silly little detail that in the grand scheme of things probably did not matter. He would exclaim, "Geez, Ian, it's good enough." "Not until I say it is," I would say. When I think back on it now, I realize he had urgency for a reason. And I've taken some time to reflect on this and learn I need to apply it in my own life. He didn't have time to waste on doing something that didn't matter. He knew his job here was to spend all of his time doing things that did matter. He knew he had friends to make, relationships to build, smiles to unfold on people's faces, jokes to tell, and laughs to hear. He had living to do. And that's what he was really good at. And so I want him to know, Dad, you were good enough. You were way more than good enough. You were magical. Murray, with my mom's support, of course, did everything he could for his family. He treated every day as a gift, and was one of the people I know that really didn't take life for granted. Murray was such a family man that having all of us, kids, mom, grandkids, in the same room together would bring a tear to his eye, out of nowhere. I remember growing up thinking he had the biggest arm muscles of anyone ever. I remember him having the biggest white winter boots that anyone could possibly have. Arms and boots so big he could rescue us from a snowstorm if need be. He felt safe, like he could keep his whole family from harm. I admire how he was always calm, brave, and steady in all the hunting, fishing, and camping he taught us to love. And we did a lot of that with him. He's a huge contributor to my obsession with the outdoors. I always treasure that time spent with him. He has many epic hunting, camping, and fishing stories, some of which you'll read on the walls. I'm often reminded of him while I work. They say of all of our senses, smell is most strongly linked with memories.
The smell of silicone, which I work with pretty much every day, will always instantly take me back to times of helping him when I was very, very young in bathroom remodels. I would insist on being in the tub with him, likely in the way, asking all sorts of annoying kid questions, and him being so patient. Seared in my memory is him caulking in the tub in his super stained bright blue sweatpants, lightly torn underwear, and a bit of his butt crack. That's how he did Reynolds. And he was my hero. Murray, having had his own business, gave me the courage to start my own. And then my brother Dean started his own. And now Dean and I work together every day. We saw the advantages. He worked very hard, but he was also free to make his own decisions and to be there for his family. When time had passed, we were all grown up. My parents now had grandchildren, and they were living at the lake, set up to mostly retire and get to enjoy their amazing place there. The grandchildren remember the days at the lake so fondly, so many smiles and giggles he got out of them, and it made him so happy. Often he would be seen with at least 4 little kids on his lap at a time while reading a story. I'm sure I convinced you he was an incredible dad, and believably was even a more amazing grandfather. He was Papa. And just like with my brother, sister, and I, he was willing to do anything for them. He lived a very fulfilling life with an amazing wife at his side to guide him, and the man had no enemies. I'm so proud to call him my dad. I hope to follow in his footsteps and earn the same love and respect he received. You can tell by everyone in this room and how many people are here how loved he really was. And although he will be tremendously missed, I carry him with me everywhere I go. Something he said to me every chance he got growing up was, "Have I told you today that I love you?" And so I ask, have I told you today, Dad, that I love you? Thanks, everyone. That was rough.
Good job, you guys.
Hi, everybody. That was a hard act to follow, but we each didn't feel like we could even do it together because we all just had different stories to tell about him, and to each our own things to say. So there is some repetition, sorry, but mine's funnier. We are all here today, all these people here, over capacity, I'm sure, because we all loved this man, whether we called him Murray, Muzz, Uncle Murray, Cousin Murray, Papa, or Dad. And I feel confident in saying that by the way he lived, each of us knows that he truly loved his life so fully. It's because of all of us here who are in it. Murray worked at Silverwood Dairies in London for a stint after high school and forestry school before moving to Saskatoon. His job was to mix and taste all the different varieties of ice cream, and he became known as the Flavor Man. He could not have had a more fitting title to manifest throughout his years, as Murray truly added flavor to life. Our dad was a very special man in all senses of the word special. He was a complete paradox, which is two opposite things, if you don't know that. I was told by my family that maybe my teacher words are too much sometimes. He was quite sharp in business, but he had a terrible memory. Like, over the course of 15 years, he continuously offered his favorite drink, a Caesar, to his son-in-law, who was allergic. 15 years without asking. It's only in like the last 3 that he finally remembered. He was very serious about working hard, but he was a true sentimental. Like when he bawled his eyes out walking me down the aisle, his mom reminded him, this was a wedding, not a funeral. He was very fiscally responsible. He would say, Scotch. And yet he bought more motorized toys than anyone I've ever met, and probably most of you here too. While I was away at university in Edmonton, he would call and tell me how much he loved me, how much he missed me, and go on, and then I wouldn't hear from him for a month. Out of sight, out of mind. That was just him. His mannerisms made people feel like they were the most important people in the world when he spoke to them. And I believe he really did think that for each and every one of you. But he often spoke without thinking. His welcome to the family speech to my husband included mention of the fact that he finally decided he liked him when they were in a canoe together and Matthew tipped the canoe on purpose, and that made him give him super props that he was willing to tip the canoe. But that only happened a week before our wedding. So not really thinking. Murray wore his heart on his sleeve, made everyone laugh, often at his own expense, and he truly lived by his motto, you could never have too many friends. Growing up with him as our dad was certainly an adventure. He was always going out of his way to do things for our mom and us kids to make life better and so much fun. He was always helping my mom with a house project, painting and repainting all the walls, putting up innumerable shelves. And for us kids, he built us forts in the house, elaborate igloos and luges in the yard, and put up illegal structures without permits, like a treehouse that built on the fence, just so we could jump onto the trampoline from it. He said he didn't like that. When we were teenagers, the used car lot in front of our house, which included 14 vehicle registrations at one time, including 2 motorhomes and a limousine, that he purchased so we could go on family trips, certainly drove Mom crazy. But man, our friends loved to hang out at our house and drive around in his vehicles. And Murray was all for it. The more friends, the better, of course. And Ian, Dean, and I each have several friends here, which is testament to he touched not only his own generation. We hosted many international students in our home through Rotary, developing lasting connections all over the world. Murray even volunteered to host one of the students' friends who'd come to Canada to visit, and instead of her finding her own accommodations, he said, just come stay with us. And she stayed for weeks. There would be company over for supper at our house almost every weekend, invited by Murray, who may or may not have informed Lynn. And this oh-so-enduring habit continued throughout all the years. Most recently, after his esophagus surgery, he invited his nurse and her family for supper. And they came. Papa, as he was affectionately known by the grandkids, and the rest of us too, naturally continued to take on the funmaker role with the next generation. Even better, now that there was no pressure to actually parent. He spent much time in his favorite place to be, at his home at the lake, taking everyone out on the boat, fishing, tubing, wakeboarding, when the weather was nice. In the summer, he traded that for snowmobiles, ice shacks, and hot tubs. He would do anything to get the kids' smiles and our smiles to match his. In the house, he was frequently found to be reading book after book after book to the littles, and to mix Caesar and Margarita, one after the other, for the bigs. Even the grand dogs, all 5 of them, felt his love as he played fetch on the beach or off the deck for hours on end. All throughout our lives, he never missed an opportunity to show us and to tell us how proud he was of us and how much he loved us. Even the way his life on earth ended happened in a Murray way, bringing his family to his home on Christmas Eve so that we could spend some truly meaningful time together. It's a sad but true tendency that only when reading all the words, memories, stories after someone has passed do you really get a complete picture of their life and the amount of people they touched. I have only begun to realize after having done that and typed up all the stories on the walls how much that I took for granted that this amazing person was my dad. There is an epidemic of loneliness in the world right now, and if he's taught us all one lesson, it's that life is only fully lived in relationship with others. I follow a psychologist, author, and speaker with years of education and counseling practice. Her podcast is called Unlonely, which speaks clearly to her area of expertise. Her post of the day just yesterday could not have been more apt. The biggest mistake we make in life is thinking we have time. Be present, be kind, love more, love now. My dad didn't need a PhD to know this. He lived it fully, each and every day. I may be the one in our family who chose teacher as my career. But he was the master teacher of the most important life lesson. And all he would want out of all of us here is to remember it and to live it each and every day. That's all he would have wanted. Try as he might, for over 40 years, Dad could never learn how to say things properly in French. But he was always continuing to try. So as I heard him say incorrectly, ever so often to his grandchildren, Papa, je t'aime toi.
First grandchild by quite a few years. I was born to a set of quite young parents who needed some help here and there. My mama and my papa were some of the biggest helpers for my mom and my dad. Just a few days ago, I was going through an old agenda of milestones and activities I did as a kid. I would say about 80% of the time it was Mama and Papa took Enver to do this, or Mama and Papa helped with this, and so on. I was very close with my papa as he was just about one of my only grandpas who were involved with me a lot. I grew very close to him and I spent a lot of time being the only grandchild for a while, which was pretty lucky. I'd sleep over often and hang out very often. I used to beg my mama to sleep with me and she'd leave papa to sleep on his own. Sorry. I grew up with him and my mama, and the way I act a lot of the time is from my papa. I use all of his funny French pronunciations, his silly messed up words, and I just love making fun of how he did things sometimes because he was quite special at some moments. I have a few stories and moments to share about him. I had the opportunity to go to Mexico with my family, and one of the funniest moments during that trip is when we all decided to go fishing. We had to meet the boat owner really early in the morning. It was dark out on a small, narrow jungle line highway. My papa was the one that was driving our little rented minivan. The highway from the apartment to the marina had a lot of huge speed bumps, some marked with paint and some not. So before we left, we packed up a few things in bags and in a styrofoam cooler. When we left, Papa decided to go down the road at 80 kilometers an hour. We had to warn him about most of the speed bumps, but we missed one. Safe to say, we probably caught air after he hit that speed bump as absolutely fast as he could. He broke our cooler when it landed in the truck. Food, ice, and drinks were everywhere. And everyone made sure he remembered that one. We all kept telling him, Papa, you're supposed to slow down before you hit speed bumps, which ticked him off, and he made an effort to say thanks, Tips, and consuming the saying, accidentally saying, thanks, Chips. Papa heard about that for the rest of the trip and years after that as well, especially for me. As a young child, I honestly don't remember much, but me and him had our own little special thing, which was the Rough Riders mascot, Gainer. It was a stuffed animal you would put on your hand, and it was our thing. I had the chance to keep him, which meant a lot to me, because it just reminds me of him. My papa used to love my long hair. He used to ask me to brush it and play with it and braid it and put pins in it, just anything he could. He would tell me how beautiful it looked every single time I saw him when I was younger and as I got older. My last story is when my papa did a golf camp kind of thing, and he was teaching everybody how to golf. I remember being so proud that he was my grandpa, that he was the one that organized this and was teaching all these kids to do this. I remember being jealous of all the kids getting so much attention, and I was getting ignored, which was not like me with my papa. I would act out just a little bit to get his attention a little bit more, but he told me later that day I was the reason he started that golf camp, and those words really stuck with me because so many kids joined, and he taught them something that was so dear to him. There's this one song that kind of reminds me of him for some reason. It's in French, which is ironic because he can't speak it, but that's why I feel like it's special. It goes, Je te laisserai des mots en dessous de ta porte, en dessous de les murs qui chantent, tout près de la place où tes pieds passent, caché dans les trous de ton divan, et quand tu es seul pendant un instant, embrasse-moi quand tu voudras. The translation to this poem is, I would spare you words, under your door, under the walls that sing, close to where your feet pass, hidden in the holes of your couch, and when you are alone for a second, hug me when you want to. It reminds me of him and what it was like being in his house with him. There's one Bible verse that I think everyone could use in this time of grieving. Psalm chapter 73, verse 26. My flesh and my heart faileth, but God is the strength of my heart and my portion forever. My papa meant a lot to me, and it's hard to see him go, but I've heard many people say God is the most merciful on Christmas Eve.
Judy and company.
On behalf of the Lakers, we would like to share with you some favorite memories of Saskatchewan's oldest teenager and social worker, Murray. For a number of years, we traveled together, and oftentimes overnight, Mexico, Palm Springs, Arizona, Moose Jaw, Elkridge, Kindersley, to name a few. If you have ever done the same with Murray, you have been privy to the blue housecoat. But the best times by far are the staycations at Shields. Suppers, campfires, redneck yacht club parties, fishing competitions, both winter and summer, big mers, wing and steak knives. We could go on and on. To no end the shenanigans, whether it be laughing with Murray or at Murray. Murray are stories we talked about for the rest of our lives as you live on through us. Most of them we won't repeat. Murray was an entrepreneur, an idea man, whether it was importing electric golf carts, exporting trucks overseas, or mining for copper. Murray's salesmanship would win you over. Funny though, he never opened up a gas station. He was forever running out of gas in his toys. Murray, what's wrong with your sled? He replied, I don't know, I can't figure it out. Load this sucker up and we'll take it into town. Did you check for gas or turn the key on? Murray, no. Gas was added, the key was turned on, and it fired right up. Murray's vision for the golf course was one of many strengths. We were so fortunate to have him on the committee to execute his ideas. When the very serious concerns or ideas were discussed, the driveway committee convened. Murray, Gary, Dwayne, and Murray went back and forth until every detail was finalized and the plan was put into motion.
With all the fun and games, we would be remiss not to mention the countless hours Murray gave back to his community. He could be seen giving pickleball lessons at the sport court, golf lessons at the Shields Golf Course, and planning many social events as well as with the Rotary Club. Murray had a gift of making everyone feel someone special, lending a helping hand and mixing a fantastic drink. His mixologist skills never disappointed. The Caesars, margaritas, and wine were always on tap, among other things. We will look at our beautiful sunrises, remembering how Murray loved them, stories around the campfire, and time with friends. All the things we take for granted are reminders of how precious life is. Murray has made us all better people, so let's all follow his lead and choose to live by the Rotary four-way test. Is it the truth? Is it fair to all concerned? Will it build goodwill and better friendships? Will it be beneficial to all concerned? Excuse me. The most beautiful things in life are not things. They're people and places, memories and pictures. They're feelings and moments and smiles and laughter. We thank you, Murray, for everything that you were, all you gave, and may you now forever rest in peace with the certain knowledge that you were, are, and always will be dearly loved and terribly missed. Your life was our adventure.
So many things to say, and before we invite anyone else up that would like to share a story, we know there are more out there. Before that, we are going to do something that you maybe never done at a celebration of life, but it was so appropriate for Murray. We are about to pass out shots of margarita to everybody, or hopefully everybody, and hopefully we have enough. And hold your shots until Dean, the last of his 3 kids, gives a toast.
Why would you do that? Easier than having forgiveness than
These are non-alcohol.
Folks behind us.
Hey there. Does everybody have a shot that wants one? Put your hand up if you're missing a shot. Jump and scream, whatever it takes.
what's best. He would often invite friends over to enjoy one of them and tell you that his were better than anybody else that he met. So let's all share one together in honor of Murray. Here's Dan. Murray.
Hello? Okay, thanks everyone for getting through all of that. Now is when we invite people to come up and share stories. Be brave. If you've got something good, he'll want to hear it. So we start with Al here, a fellow Rotarian of Murray's. He requested I help him out here.
Well, thank you, Ian. And as Ian said, my name is Al Muir. And Murray was my buddy. And I think looking around the room, there's a whole lot of people in here that would say the same thing. Murray was their buddy. But before I start, Amber, Murray's oldest grandchild, struck a memory. And I can recall being at a party once where Amber was about 5 years old. And I asked her what her name was, and she said, "It's Enver. It's Denver without the D." Well, Murray was a people person, as you've heard time and again today, with a multitude of genuine buddies. And our friendship grew over many years. I knew Murray for over 40 years. I met Murray through Rotary as we worked and played together over the years with fundraising projects like Black and White Night and most recently the Lobster Fest and many social events I won't get into. And I know, looking around the room, that there's a whole pile of Murray's Rotary buddies here today. And at the risk of being inappropriate, I'm going to ask those buddies, Rotary buddies, and their spouses to just wave their hand in the air so people can see how many of them there are. I'm listening to Murray's epic adventures, from fighting with City Hall over his non-compliant plans to develop his front yard and the treehouse over the trampoline and all those things. Gee, I don't know. And then burning his house to the ground while he was in Mexico. I don't know how he did that. And the subsequent battle with an insurance provider, Murray always contended that he came up about 100,000 short on that venture. And I remember once in talking, Rosie was seeing his cabin. You know, he's got a great view over the lake. And one day he saw this beautiful bird out there and he wanted to grab his camera, his special camera, and take a picture. And oh my gosh, he realized that was one of the items he lost in the fire and he forgot to replace it. Anyway, now then, another adventure, he liked exchange students. He hosted a lot of them. One was a French girl, and she was modest, and he didn't realize what her background was. She invited Murray and Lynn to come to France at any time to visit. He took her up on that. They ended up in a French chateau. Murray was not comfortable there. They didn't stay very long. Who remembers when Murray hosted a French exchange couple from New Zealand? The lady experienced a heart attack while at Murray's home in the shower. I bet you do. And amazingly, the first response team from Dundurn was there within, 20 minutes? And they hospitalized her for quite a long time here in Saskatoon. And while they were doing that, of course, the husband stayed at Murray's house. And the two of them hatched up the scheme to buy a half-ton truck, convert it to a right-hand drive, and take it over to New Zealand. They were short supply over there, and they really fetched a good price, right? No, it didn't work out that way. They didn't make any money in that deal. My fondest memories of Murray are from Palm Springs area. For many years, Murray, Lynn, my wife Myrna, and I wintered in Palm Springs. Our homes were only a mile apart. It was pretty common for Murray to show up unannounced, all by himself, while I was out in the back patio reading the paper or whatever. And Murray would let Lynn and Myrna, too much like, Murray would let Murray in, and he would help himself to a water glass, fill it with ice and Coke, and a large serving of my Crown Royal. And only then, glass in hand, would he wander out in the backyard and say, "Hey, Al, how's it going?" That glass would get filled more than once. Murray loved to sing, and he had a pretty good voice at that. We spent many evenings over dinner and karaoke with Murray providing the entertainment. One evening, Lynn and Myrna decided to go to a rock concert somewhere in a casino. Murray and I didn't want to go. So we stayed back at my place, had a few, imbibed a few, and played cards for a little while. And that got kind of boring, so we decided to go over to the bar lounge in our gated community, where they were having a karaoke night. Now Murray went over it's about a half a mile away. Murray went over in Myrna's golf cart, and I reeled over. On the way back, Murray thought I was going too slow, and I should grab a hold of the back of the golf cart. We find out the wheelchair needed a wheel alignment. There were many other adventures that involved, and some of them involved Robert and Trudy Fisher. They were frequent visitors. But if I had to sum it up in one word, Murray, in one word, it would be genuine. What you saw was what you got. A wonderful human being that made the world a little better for his presence. Thank you all for listening.
Okay, and in an informal fashion, anybody else that wants to come up and speak, the mic's open.
I have two little quick stories. One is last winter, coming home from Mexico, and we run across Lynn and Murray in the airport. And Lynn saying, "Hello, what are you guys doing here?" And I said, "Come on." There's Murray having a little nap. I kissed him on the forehead. He woke up and he said, "Oh my God, I fell asleep a frog and now I'm a prince." Like, he's so quick. The other thing is for Murray's kids, because I know he asked advice on how to get pumpkins very big, because he had offered his kids a contest to who would get the biggest pumpkin from the seeds he gave them. And I was there, so he said, "Do you know, Jan?" And I said, "Well, my brother does." So then I phoned him, inject milk into the pumpkin. He said, "Really?" So he looked it up. Good, I'm gonna get my money back. That was Murray.
Hi everyone, my name is Warren, and 25 years ago I used to play volleyball with Murray. I don't know if you can all picture this.
Yeah.
And there were times when Ian and Dean would join us, and that was a lot of fun. And I know that Murray and I shared a love for volleyball, and we talked about how much we looked forward to seeing each other every Wednesday and just being there. He would show up in his green sweatpants and green sweater that matched. And he didn't die very often, so people would purposely put the ball right in front of him. And then he just goes, oh, you little bugger. And then he would pull me aside and he'd say, I don't know how you do this. I have a massage book every Thursday. The day after. Anyways, we had a lot of good times. Murray threw a backyard barbecue at his place. It was Lawson Heights. And we had some good times. Cheers, everyone. Thank you.
You know, I teach for a living to a much smaller group of people, so this is new to me, but my boss always says to me, you never get a second chance to make a first impression. And that was Murray. When you walked into a room, whether you knew him or not, your first impression was you just met one of the best people you're gonna know. When I first met Murray at the golf course, I came out of that experience knowing that I was gonna really enjoy knowing that person. And I did. And I had the opportunity to teach him something one day when he asked if I would teach him how to make deer sausage. And he came in full of life, and with Dean and Ian, had about 400 pounds of meat. And I was like, holy shit. So about 1 o'clock in the morning, I don't think he was done yet, because I'm sure that Lynn wasn't going to let him back in the house. But he went off somewheres, he went his way, and Bailey came and got Dean. And I called him at about 3 o'clock in the morning, and I said, Darren, I think next year before we invite them over, we're going to want to know how much they're going to make. But I'm going to miss those days. I'm going to miss his unofficial, official lessons at the golf course. He was always willing to lend a hand and teach you all the things that you didn't know you needed to know. That's right.
I just want to add to the deer making or deer sausage making story that he worked Ian and Dean under the table that day.
Okay, well, everyone can carry on, eat, drink, be merry in his memory, and at any point come up, whatever. People will see you up here and listen.